Hello, Anthony Carruthers, Better Lesson Master Teacher Project. And one of the things that I feel really strongly about is that students should get practice reading their textbooks. Um, I think that's a good skill for them to have. And reading a math textbook, as we know, is not like reading a novel. So it's something that we have to train students on. In this particular instance, students were to read basically 2 pages on angles. And I'm pretty sure if I had just given them, time to read silently, they would have spent, 3 or 4 minutes reading, and they would have claimed to understand everything they read, and they would have moved on. So what I had to do was try to find a way to make them read more deeply. So what I did was created these questions that accompany the reading, and basically anything that was stated or explained in the reading, I would just have a follow-up check for understanding type question. So this is what you see here. And in that way, it let me know how well each student, one, was reading, but two, how well they understood what they were reading. There are a few the things that I actually paid more attention to, like for example, number 3, why is it that some angles can be named with 1 letter as opposed to other angles having to be named with 3 letters? So the book provided some good examples of this, but students still had to do some synthesizing to actually explain, why this is the case. So this student did a fairly good job saying there may be 3 or more angles with that vertex. So if you only use 1 letter, you wouldn't be able to tell which angle it was. So she pretty much captures the essence of it there. Okay, another thing, I wanted them to make connections to things they had learned previously. So previously we had learned about the segment addition postulate and also the ruler postulate. And I wanted them to see the connections between those things and the angle addition postulate and protractor postulate, which we were learning in this section of reading. Okay, number 8, I had asked a question about angle measure being thought of as a distance around a circular arc. And when I got these papers back, and there wasn't really any paper that did a good job of explaining that. So that was something I had to go back and explain to the class based on the feedback I got on these papers. Number 9 was another good way to see if students were really reading. It asked what condition must be satisfied in order for the conclusion in the angle addition postulate to be true. So um, in order to really get into that question, students first of all had to know the hypothesis and conclusion of the angle addition postulate. And this student, correctly identified the condition that the angles must be adjacent. So again, this is something that students probably wouldn't be able to answer the first time just by looking at the question. It forced them to kind of grapple with it and spend some time reading more deeply. And that was really my goal. Number 10, again, this is the first time we had introduced linear pairs, and would have been easily glossed over if students were just doing silent reading, but I wanted to make sure they were actually reading deeply, as I said before, and this student was able to identify the linear pair in the diagram. Number 12, again, the book had done a pretty good job of explaining what it means for 2 angles to be adjacent, and it laid out some requirements for what would make angles adjacent. And they also provided some counterexamples, or non-examples. So the non-examples are shown here, example 1, 2, and 3. And students had to be clear on which of the conditions were violated by these non-examples. And that wasn't explicitly stated in the book. So by them being able to explain which conditions were violated, it let me know how well they understood those conditions. So again, this student did a good job of that, showing how in example 1, that angle 3 and angle 4 do not have a common side. In example 2, angle 3 and angle 4 don't have a common vertex, so that was the violation. And in example 3, angle 3 is actually in the interior of angle 4, and she adds parenthetically, that means that they have common interior points, which was also a violation. So basically, again, this was just a way for me to force students' hands to read a little bit more deeply, and then also a way for me to check their understanding of what they read. Um, so this is something I definitely would like to do more of in the future. Like I said, I want students to read the textbook, but I always have to find ways to make sure they're reading it deeply and reading it for understanding. So Anthony Carruthers, Better Lesson, Master Teacher Project.